We're going to learn a little bit about Hilchos Bedikas Chametz. We're going to start off with the halachos of the bracha, and just in the spirit of Pesach, why is this night different than all other nights of the whole year? Is like a refrain that we feel all the time, and I think that the first Mishaburas over here are going to cause us to ask that question, and I think we're going to have to try to come to some clear answer to that question. Taf Lamed Aleph. B'tchila Sil Arba'asa B'Nisan Boitchim Es HaChametz. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, we'll do missing. Okay, we want to do. Okay, we'll get to there in a minute. At the beginning of the night, where are you buying the chametz? B'chayim u'sdakim. What are chayim and sdakim? Chayim and sdakim are not the cracks in your floor. Chayim and sdakim are like those people who go to the Ir Atikah. So inside the walls of the Ir Atikah, there is chorim that soldiers used to stand there and shoot from. I don't know, they have some kind of name, Yehuda? But a chor and a sedek is what we would call in English a cubby hole. I don't know how you call that in nowadays. I don't know, that's probably an outdated term. Right? But anyway, some kind of a place where you put things. Chorim and Zdakim are not places that things get messed up. Anything that you have, if you think that you have to clean in between the balatas of your floor for Pesach, you do because it's covered Yontif, but you should do it before Shavuos and Sukkot too. Okay, and it's not a good idea, but it has nothing to do with chametz because you don't keep any chametz there, as far as I know. All right, unless you're an ant. A place where people put chametz there. Now, I'd like to say that where is it that people put chametz will vary from one house to the other. Okay, and I'll just use this as an example that there are some people who eat in bed, and some people are horrified at the idea. Now, you can do whatever you want. I'm not in your bed. I don't have to sleep on your sheets. It's fine. You can do it. I don't care. But in the person's night table, there are many people who snack when they're in bed. And you say, no, I never do that. So I'll ask you, and what about when you were sick? How? When I was sick? Unfortunately, people get sick. I don't know if you're aware of that. So that becomes a place where you could eat. So even though you don't do that regularly, but it's a place where people can bring things to food. Can bring food to those places. There are certain places which, in my opinion, you do not have to check. And I use this example because I think here in Eretz Yisrael, it's a good example. I don't really have a example that's parallel to it in America. The upper cabinets in your closet, in your bedroom, that's used for storage. You don't go there in the middle of the meal. You don't go there unless you're doing what they call in my house, Yala V'Yovoy. Bringing up and down things for changing the season. That's not a place where you go in the middle of something. You go there at specific times with a certain purpose, and you're not eating when you're doing that. So as far as I'm concerned, those places are not makomos shemachlisim bo chametz. Is that like that in your house? That's it. You don't bring it. Now, I didn't discuss whether the clothing that is there have to be checked or not. But you're not going to find in there any chametz laying around. There's no candy bars, no cookies that are going to be found over there. The ants don't go there because there's no nutrition over there. Okay? So if somebody says that, that's fine. here in shul, one is not mechuyev to check on top of the svarim shayks. You know why? Because nobody puts anything up there. Okay, I would just like to share with you a story that happened in my home. I gave a shir. This is about 15 years ago. And I said, you don't have to check on top of the svarim shayks in your house because it's not a place where people put chametz. And a few days afterwards, I walked into my son's room and I saw him like a squirrel scurrying down the shelves of the svarim shayk. And that's like a pretty funny thing to do. When he left the room, I didn't climb up the shelves. I actually took a ladder. And on top of the svarim shayk, I found a stash of stuff that he put away from Purim. Also, my wife's cell phone that was missing. Also, I think a watch was over there. The guy was mamish, a pirate that had a wonderful place to store his things, and it was full of chametz. So if you have a kid like mine, so even the top of your svarim shayk has to be clean because kachazeh. Anyways, I don't think he does that anymore. Probably has a better place to hide it nowadays. Anyways, but the bottom line is, if you have kids like that, so then maybe you have to check over there. But regular people, I don't think you have to check over there. Not only that, I'll just mention, I wouldn't be surprised if I checked on top of all the svarim shayks here in shul, that I'd probably find some candy that somebody threw at some chassan or bar mitzvah boy and landed up there. But im kozot, I don't think you're mechuyev to check it. Okay. Says the Mishnah Berurah, B'tchilas halayla, perish tekevach et zis chavim she'ein adayin ksas me'or hayom v'roi lahascha livdai. It's a little bit light, and even though it's already night, but it's a little bit light. Kedei shelo yisrashel or shelo yishkach. Boitkin, v'gam tzorch levatel oz hachametz, yati mevatel hachametz. I've been learning Hilchos Pesachim for many years. I don't know if I have a good translation of what the word to be mevatel chametz is. I recall when I was in Detroit and they were giving a get to a lady, I was intrigued because I was many times by Nesinas HaGet in Eretz Yisrael, and you say that the get has to be given lishma. I want to know, how do you say that word lishma in English? I was dissatisfied. I think they did as good a job as anybody else, but I don't think you can really project that. What does lishma mean?
What's the purpose, for the reason?
Yeah, I understand, but you know what? Do you think that when you tell somebody that's irreligious, you should give the get for the purpose of a get? What are they going?
With the right intention. You need intention.
I know it's the right intention. That's not what it means by intention. It means your first definition was closer to correct. Your second was more understandable, but more wrong. Mishma, what does Mishma mean? I don't know. I don't know what it means. I mean, maybe I do know what it means, but I find it difficult to express it. So when you're mevatel chametz, what does it mean? Anybody want to help me out? If I was a fancy English guy, I'd say it probably means to nullify the chametz. Anyone tell me, what does it mean to nullify chametz? You know, as the Chabrusa says, okay, so now you don't know what it means in English instead of not knowing what it means in Hebrew. What does it mean to nullify the chametz? It's not that. That's a machlokes rishonim. If bittul is hefker or not. What does it mean, Yehuda?
You totally disconnect yourself from it.
That's I would say 85%. I'm 85. You have an answer? You don't have to be afraid. I won't be mevatel you. To nullify it means that you consider it nothing. You consider, I could say, I don't like you. I'm going to have nothing to do with you. You're still a something. But I say, ata push. Anybody want to translate that into English? How do you say that? In Yiddish means you're a garnished. You're ta'efes, yeah, right? What does that mean? That you're not to be reckoned with. You're a non-entity. When a person says that I would consider my chametz nullified, what it means to say is I consider it as if it's not there as far as my relationship to it. I absolve myself on your relationship to it at all. I consider it as nothing. That's what bittul means. Now that is a ridiculous statement, because how could you say something worth $50 is nothing? The answer is to you. No, you're not saying an objective statement, you're saying a subjective statement. And that's why bittul is something which, according to many Rishonim, Chazal are afraid that people won't really be mevatel it. They may say it, but they don't mean it. It's just like a little kid when his parent says, tell your brother you're sorry. And he says, I'm sorry. How much does it mean? Efes. Bittul, right? It means nothing. No, there's certain things that have to be from within. And bittul is something from within. Yes, it has value. And all I can tell you is, let's say somebody has a car and he had a whole bunch of times trouble with it and it broke down the side of the road. And he says, forget it, I'm leaving it here. Okay? That's bittul. That also everybody understands that. I guess everybody had a car like that. Anyways, but let's move on. That's you don't want to have anything to do with it. It's bad luck. You don't want it. That's bittul. Okay. What do you mean? You could say, you could take it to the junkyard and they'll give you $50. Let them come and get it. Okay. You know what I'm talking about? That's bittul. So the reason why I'm spending time on it, because we're going to have to discuss why we don't rely on bittul, because you got to be there. Anyways, yeah.
Just ask on the beginning, like the Leal you've done it.
Right.
This man is pretty much doing everything at least the day before.
Okay.
And Bilal, you done it is a bit of a token.
Yeah, this is an excellent question. This is an excellent question.
I suppose just to clarify that, is the question that is there any mitzvah aspect in what you've done before? Or is that just a haksha mitzvah or nothing at all?
I'll tell you. The question you're asking, a very good question, but it has to be broken into a few smaller questions.
Hear the question?
The question is, all of us cleaned before Pesach. So what are we looking for? Okay, there's a joke about this Yerushalayim Yid that didn't have a cent, and he woke up in the middle of the night, and he sees a guy in his apartment with a flashlight. So he says, "What are you doing?" So he says, "I'm looking for money." So the Yerushalayim guy jumps out of bed and says, "I'll go with you 50-50. Maybe we'll find something over here. There's no chance, right?" So the question over here is, if we're already clean for Pesach, have we done already the Bedikas? And the answer to that question is no.
Have you got any mitzvah for doing what you've done the last 3 weeks?
You have prepared for the Bedikas. This is the classical understanding. Now, I'm going to tell you, I wasn't really planning to speak about it today, but I'll speak about it from the most fascinating modern day halachas. You have to understand, if any of you were ever go to the old city and take a tour of Yerushalayim, I call Yerushalayim Shalmata in Swilan, or you can even go, Yehuda Nissan will give you a tour over here next to the Grosh Shul, and you can see the size of houses that people lived in 2,000 years ago. Okay, this shul is, you could put in here 30 houses, yeah? Is that about right? Okay, their house, how long do you think it took to clean the place up? They didn't have winter clothes and summer clothes and boots and sweaters. They didn't have all that, what we call that great American word called stuff. Okay, they didn't have stuff. They didn't have anything. To clean your house took a very short time. Okay, we've changed the way that we live, and we have a lot of stuff in a lot of place and a lot of tzaras. That's all goes together. So, according to many, what happens is the lady of the house, she demands that the kitchen be ready for Pesach 3 days before, 4 days before, so she can cook. So they cleaned and scrubbed all the cupboards, took out all the chametz, put in the Pesach things, and it comes Bedikas Chametz night, and the husband says, okay, everything out of here. This was never checked for chametz. Now, I'm not a mean guy. There's halachas how Bedikas have to be done. Bedika has to be done or haner. Bedika has to be done at night. And this is a question, how do you actually deal with your places that you want to that you want to switch over in advance? In my opinion, the proper thing to do is someday you clean out all those closets, you wait until that evening, and then you check that place with a candle, and then you put in the Pesach things, and you did a Bedika on that place before Pesach. Before Pesach means before you did it. You did it early. Rav Nissen Karelitz has a novel answer to this question, and this question is, I'm just going to say this over now, is his answer is beautiful because it takes care of another problem that we have. One of the things that people do for Pesach is they put paper everywhere. Right? There's no surface that doesn't have Scotch tape and paper. That's like from Seres HaDibros of Pesach. Why is that? I'm sitting over here on a Formica table. There are no cracks in a Formica table. If I spilled oil on the Formica table, I can clean it off. If you have, I don't know if any of you have ever seen a wood meat chopping board that's used. It's oily, greasy, after you clean it with soap. Why is it? Because it's real. It's not plastic. It's not like this. In the olden days, all of their surfaces at best were made out of wood, and wood is full of cracks, it's porous, it absorbs, and therefore the poskim say you can never really clean it. You just can't. It doesn't get clean. All right. Now you have to also understand in those days, as I say this over to those who are learning Basar V'Chol, I gave a shir here at the Kollel not long ago. The Gemara says that Stam Sakin has Shuman on the blade. A regular Sakin is, the blade is greasy. So I don't know what the Gemara is talking about. Go to my kitchen, take a look at my knives. They're not greasy. So I said, I'd just like to ask you one question. Imagine you didn't have running water, you didn't have hot water, and you didn't have soap. What would your knife look like? You had to wash it and soak it in cold water. How good a job can you do on it? So we live in a different environment. I'm not right now getting involved in what the halacha is because of that, but it's definitely not for sure that that's what it says in halacha is applicable today, because sometimes it's Baruch Hashem and it's sometimes Hashem Yerachem. We live in a different world than what they were speaking about. That's not called that the halacha changed. Just the different set of rules over there. So at the bottom line, according to many poskim, even though you cleaned, you still were not makayim the mitzvah of Bedika.
But what did Rav Nissen Karelitz say about the?
So Rav Nissen Karelitz says that by papering it up, so you put a mechitza between the place where the chametz was used and where you are, and therefore it doesn't need a bedika. It becomes like the room that you're selling to the guy. That's his answer to the question. It's a fascinating answer. So that helps. People say, why would I get into this? Because people say, I know my grandmother used to put up this paper, but that was in the olden days. Do we really have to do it today? So in my opinion, there's good sources to say that you don't really have to do it today. But if you're not going to do it, like according to Bedikas and Korelitz, it's going to give you a different obligation. So you have to really know what to do. But the bottom line is, according to many poskim, and not tonight, but a different night, we're going to see that some actually annex this question, this answer of yours, and say that that's good enough, that you could be not mechuyev to do Bedikas Chametz, but not that you have done Bedikas Chametz. In other words, let's make this clear. If I had a bakery and then I decided I'm turning my bakery into an operating theater, and I did this Hanukkah time, do you think that you have to check it for Chametz?
Does it become a makom shein machnisim bo chametz at some point?
It does. It does, but the question is, what about what was there before? It became from this January 1st, a makom shein machnisim bo chametz. But what about the chametz shehuchnas shama until the end of December?
So we have when somebody travels up to Shloshim Yom, and then I don't worry about it.
That's if he doesn't know that he vaday left. But if he knows that he left chametz, even Rosh Hashanah, he has to go back. Right? So, but you're warned. That's really where the answer is. Being that we've been cleaning this operating room for the last 4 months, we can assume that there's nothing there anymore. So it changed its status from makom shemachnisim to makom she'ein machnisim. Because even if there was something left, you didn't get the first time, you get the second time, the third time. By the time Pesach came around, it definitely was cleaned out. So this is something that some of the places can rely on. There got to be certain things. But yes, your question is an excellent question, and there are many, many answers given to the question. But the bottom line, we all make a bracha when we make Bedikas Chametz, and we're not soymech that what we did beforehand was enough. According to some, that's why you put out the pieces of bread, because that takes away the makom she'ein machnisim bo chametz, because now each place that you have could really be a place that there's chametz there. Ask your kids. All right, anyways.
Could the Rav please explain the Indian? I've heard you're supposed to search even for little crumbs of chametz, and the reason they give is that you might see them on Pesach and be tempted to eat them. I find that's very strange, because do we look at like how we're supposed to feel about chametz as perhaps an opium addict feels about opium? If he finds a few grains, he's perhaps going to take them and put them in his mouth or smoke them or whatever. It seems very strange to me, because today, apart from little babies, people don't normally pick up little crumbs and eat them.
I'll tell you something. I disagree with you. I've thought about your question many times, and I challenge you. It used to be before Corona that would have been an easy challenge. Now it's hard for me to give you this challenge. You can go to a chasana and people will be talking. And in the middle of talking, somebody will take some crumbs off the table and eat them. I see it all the time. You ever see that? That's like they do that. It's like they're bored. There's some poppy seeds on the table. There's something on the table. And people do, they pick it up and they eat it absent-mindedly. Yes, there's nobody that is going to collect the crumbs and make a suda. But absent-mindedly, people do actually do that. And that's what we're afraid of. That's what Chazon Ish explains exactly your question. He says that a person is going to do these kind of things absent-mindedly. But no, yes, you're right. We don't go out there and make a suda of crumbs. But there's a habit. People have habits. Okay, I've seen, I don't mean to upset anybody's stomach, but I've seen people who have all kinds of bad habits. One of the habits that to me is the most amazing in a negative way I see people that have dirt under their nails and they clean it off and then they put it into their mouth. And okay, have another drink, yes. Anyways, I know. I think to myself, what are these people thinking? And the answer is they're not. It's not a good question because it's just they're not thinking. If you would ask them if they did it, they deny it. These are habits that people have, and they're just not thinking about what they're doing.
Thanks, I understand now. It's much clearer to me. Thanks, Rav. Now, I've also mentioned about these 10 pieces that people put aside, like the minhag, to put 10 pieces and wrap them up and so on. I heard once from a Talmud Chacham that in theory, since we're not supposed to be doing the search for these 10 pieces, we're supposed to do a proper search. You could really put the 10 pieces, just line them up on the top of a sideboard or top of a table. You don't really need to hide them. And the Talmud Chacham told an elderly couple that they should do just that.
Well, maybe we discuss that issue when we get up to the 10 pieces.
Okay, fine.
A lot of halachas to learn before we get there. Anyways, we didn't even finish one over here. So the Mishnah Berurah says, and since bittul is dependent on what a person is thinking, right? Shabnei Adam u'b'dei say him. Ula yera b'nei Adam sheish lo chametz v'chad mielach le'avke v'av shebefiv yomer she'epato. Even though he says it should be bato, v'hefker b'chashukav from mikol makom b'libo lo ken yechoshev. He's not really what we call pevel libo shavin. He's not really there. The person is going to be over on ba'yirot. You are still emotionally attached to that chametz. It's at hand. Now there's a fantastic halacha that you're not allowed to eat together with a guy on the same table on Pesach because we're afraid he may give you a piece of bread and you'll take it. Why? Because you always eat a guy's bread. No, it's in the olden times when people would eat with goyim. So that becomes an issue. It's not enough. You have to search it out and destroy it. Maybe there'll be chametz someplace and you'll be over on having chametz. The or haner. Why do you have the or haner? Because we want you to lean over and check into the chur misdakim. So you're going to have a candle, so it's going to force you to do a exacting bedika. Lost my place. Since it has to get into the cracks, you need to have it at night. The light illuminates the dark places better at night than it does in the day. So therefore, we do Bedikas Chametz at night. What does it mean? There's a derech that people put things there. Lav dafka. Av she'ein derech lahachlish shel chametz.
Torch to me is more effective. Much more comfortable to go to looks and crooks.
I would tell you that you are right. Of course. He doesn't mean a torch. He doesn't even know what a torch is. What do you think he was by Achnas Sefer Torah? What is a torch?
In Australia, you call it a torch. In South Africa,
I thought a flashlight you call it a torch.
Right, we in Australia don't do it.
Yeah, I understand. That's what I understand. I understood what he was talking about. But the answer to the question is, you really answered your question in part. The Gemara learns chipus miner, vener, miner, and therefore we want that you should have a real torch, a real fire. And there were many places in the olden days that said that you could use a flashlight. Some of the poskim that used to say that changed their mind because nowadays the flashlights are LED. It used to be that the flashlight, the bulb, was a regular incandescent bulb. Nowadays, it's just whatever. I'm not going to get involved in what LED is, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing. It's a different kind of item. But there are many people who say that you'll do a better job, and it's more important to do a better job than to be into the inyan, and they say to use torch. What I suggest that a person at least start and use a little bit of the ner, and he could use the torch in the rest of the area. I would just like to say a complaint on the torch, which I find nowadays, everything is so great. We have such great things. Our torches, our flashlights are blinding, and people don't look well. Just a cursory glance. When you have a candle and you have to get it exactly there, so you see things differently. I'll just tell you I went once horseback riding, and the person who convinced me to go, I said, I don't get it. I'd like to take a walk in the wild. I like to drive. Why would I want to go horseback riding? What's the point? I said, you'll have a nice time. Okay, so I went there. I really had a very nice time. And he asked me afterward, he said, what did you have a nice time about? So I explained to him that when you're driving, you're going way too fast, you can't really see anything. And when you're walking, you're way too busy making sure you don't stumble and fall, that you can't really look at anything. But when you're on a horse, it's just right. You're going slow enough that you can take in the scenery, and you're going fast enough that it's changing all the time, but you're really able to see everything. When you're going to have a flashlight that's high powered, so it's going to cause you to think you did a better job than you did. And that's just a word of caution. There is an advantage, but I will say that people nowadays those who are silly are not scared of a fire, with using a candle. Those who are not silly are scared because we don't know how to use a candle. Our ancestors did because they used them all the time. So people, because of that, are mistayeg from really checking properly because they don't really feel comfortable handling a candle because they understand the implications of Khalila making a fire. So there's a little bit of a both ways. So in my opinion, someone should at least start with a candle, and you could do most of the Bedika if you need to with a flashlight, but it should be a flashlight that still forces you to do a little bit of work. Okay.
How about the feather? Is that essential today? What you get in the sets, a Bedika set, they sell a feather and a wooden spoon.
The wooden spoon is not really essential. That's just a minik, and whatever. Maybe we'll discuss that someday. Supposed to burn it with the chametz together with the feather. But
Okay.
if you have a vacuum cleaner, it'll probably do a better job. Some people have these, handheld vacuum cleaners. If they didn't have them, when I was a little kid, I asked my grandmother to turn on the air conditioning, and she didn't want to turn it on. So she said to me in frustration, what did people 100 years ago do? They didn't have air conditioning. So I looked at my grandmother in the face. I said, they died. Anyways, something to think about. They didn't have a vacuum cleaner. Not everything is, anyways. It's okay. She got me more times than I got her. Don't worry about it. Anyways, that sometimes it doesn't have to be that you're there all the time. It doesn't have to be that you're steadily using chametz over there. Oh, we didn't know yet. No, do any work or eat before you're biting. Stop learning and be biting. If you start learning before the time, then you don't have to be masik. That you have to stop. So okay. I'm just going to skip right now to Ches. Achi Yivdak. The Indian Trias Arvis, Myriv. Oysa Shaspalim Myriv is Mana the Tzibor. Yispalo Bikodem. Those who daven, we'll call it 20 minutes, should daven Bazman. The Torah Lekavso Achakach. But that's really a b'diavad, right? Because Sharei Tvila Hidava Kavua, Veishach Shema Yimashech, Umispal Veitera Acha Livdoik, Umispal, they say, Yikaim Shneim is Manu. Vilek Acha Yispal Tchila, okay, if Urogel Ispal Loilam Yachidi, a person always davens alone, you the Tchila, even the Rogel Kafle Kashin Shema Yishkach. No, this idea of making the Bedika on time is really very important. But the Olam Yispal Tchila, why the Tader Shadu Tader Kodim, even though that there's something pressing over here that should force you to do it earlier. The Hischal Ilmod Lahu Adin Sham Lachabi Bod Yom is Manhattan. The Lachet Ein Tzach Lahafsik. After the Kriyashma, the Hischal Behete and Amafsik. The Hischal is Man HaAsr. He started learning when it was already Asr. He was supposed to be preparing for the Bedika. The Kuliyama Plaisik. The Bedikas Chametz Havi Doraisa. Why is it Doraisa?
Well,
Ashbisu. So
Okay.
Ari B'Teichem.
Okay, so just pointing out that at this point right now, it's not yet Doraisa. It's only going to be Doraisa. It has to do with a Doraisa that the person is going to be over on, even though right this minute it's not a Doraisa. Tzach lahasik v'mitzvah beheter v'tam the ikar mitzvah l'chatchil kol chavet l'salayla. Okay, so hasik in order to kind of mitzvah kiti kuno. Okay, because the time is very important. Ken yoli ikar v'adin shar malachos mikomokom near dein tzach lahasik elk shegi hasman shel tzeisak echovim, and you don't have to stop a half hour before the time. But I have to stop 3 minutes before 9. Okay, have a good night. Thank you very much.